Chapter 43, Dad. 2.5 years after Mom passed away, Dad needed more attention than we could provide. We moved him into an assisted care facility with his Jack Russell Terrier, Pumpkin. However, the dog was constantly slipping from his grip and darting down the hall. Residents would scatter as the leash whipped back and forth. My father wasn't far behind, shuffling as fast as he could, wielding his cane in the air, yelling, "Pumpkin! Pumpkin!" It didn't take long before the care facility told him the dog had to go. There was no separating the two of them, so we bought a travel trailer and placed it in our backyard. Dad seemed happy to have his own place where he and Pumpkin could come and go as they pleased. My sister found it hard to believe I was willing to care for him. However, Dad wasn't the same person she grew up with. He had changed drastically after accepting the Lord. Growing up, I thought he was the most overbearing, selfish, and demanding person I'd ever known. He was rude to Mom and mean to my oldest sister and brother. However, caring for him in his old age, I found him to be funny, sweet, and sentimental. His life had turned around in his 50s once he accepted Jesus as his Savior. It's incredible how God can take a life and change it for His glory. We can't change without the Lord's help. We can't work our way to heaven or ever be good enough. Only Jesus and His cleansing blood can change us and redeem us for His name's sake. My dad was proof of that. Everyone who knew him agreed he still had a great memory and sense of humor up until his death. He was independent and quite the character. Although he had been a salesman most of his life, cars were his passion. He began driving at 14 and continued until age 88. The year Mom passed away, Dad took Pumpkin and drove 3,000 miles to attend the Dowd family reunion in North Carolina. When he arrived in town, he decided he didn't want to attend without her. So, without telling anyone, he turned around and drove back home. One afternoon, I followed a car that was bouncing between the white line and the median. Cars were steering clear of the precarious automobile, as the driver appeared to be drunk. I called the highway patrol as I slowly pulled around him. It was Dad. I followed him to his destination, which happened to be his eye doctor. He was surprised to see me, but there was a reason God had me follow him. After the exam, the doctor told us he'd had a stroke in his eye and was seeing double. Dad could hardly control his anger as he fervently denied it. When the doctor told him he could no longer drive, that was the ultimate insult. He insisted there was nothing wrong with his eyes. "There's nothing wrong with my eyesight," he stewed all the way home. "You need to make an appointment with the Department of Motor Vehicles office so I can get my license back." This was a terrible blow. I was sympathetic and gently warned, "Dad, they aren't going to reinstate your license." But it was useless. He was not giving up until I made an appointment with the DMV. We traveled the 180-mile round trip to the California State Office in Fresno. Dad was on a mission as he left the car. Leaning forward, head first, he shuffled in with his cane, determined to speak with the man in charge. We waited longer than Dad felt was necessary, which riled him even more. I sat quietly as he squabbled with the officer. The gentleman was thoughtful and kind, but denied his request anyway. Dad fumed. The drive home was icy, even though I assured him I would take him anywhere he wanted to go. He was lost without his license. Just prior to this, I had notified my managers at the office in Fresno that I would be retiring from the insurance business and had been accepted into the RN program at the local college. However, once Dad lost his license, he lost his will to live. He lounged about aimlessly in our home and his travel trailer. It was then I realized I was going to be his full-time caregiver. So when he mentioned how much he missed going places, I began taking him on weekly, sometimes daily, trips to the mountains. It was during those excursions that I learned the details of his life. He talked about his beloved dog, Brownie, who lived almost 14 years. He opened up about his family, how his oldest brother raised him because his dad worked long hours, and his mom was a midwife. She stayed away for days at a time as she helped with deliveries and then stayed afterward to care for the mother and baby. Tears formed as he talked about her, even though she had been gone for over 60 years. He dropped out of school because his dad needed help, and he thought it was a waste of time. He learned enough to get by. Laughter filled the air as we drove along. There were also moments of sadness. The worst was regret. He finally revealed the story I had often wondered about my entire life. The woman he brought to Los Angeles from Oregon. The one at the phone booth sitting in the front seat next to him. I listened intently as the details were sketchy from so many years ago. Still, it seemed he was determined to tell me. The woman was the constable's wife. It was a quick affair, a mistake to be sure. He left suddenly when her husband got wind of it and threatened him with bodily harm. The guilt had eaten away at him until he confessed privately to my mother as she lay in her casket. He told her he would take it all back if he could. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he described the moment with her. I believed his sorrow was great. He claimed he never loved anyone except Mom. The sincerity of his admission tugged at my heart, and I felt sorry for him. We became extremely close over our weekly travels and deep conversations. I grew to love and understand him like never before. In the summer of 2005, I applied to the nursing program once more and was accepted again. I was 55 years old and felt I couldn't pass up this second opportunity. I enrolled Dad in an adult daycare program provided by the county. He didn't want to be there, but he went for my sake. Although he was 90 years old, he wasn't senile. Still, they sat him at a table with large puzzle pieces and a coloring book. An automotive parts manual would have been more enjoyable. There were misunderstandings among some of the workers as Dad's jokes were not always well received, which caused some frustration on his part. When I observed the staff treating him like a child, I was not happy, but my complaints fell on deaf ears. Dad wasn't incompetent. He was hard of hearing, but he could tell when he was being patronized and resented it. He was classified as irritable, angry, and antisocial, with bursts of verbal abuse. He never portrayed those behaviors with me. On August 4th, 2005, Dad had surgery for bladder cancer and came home with a catheter. That night he got confused and pulled it out. We had to take him back to have it replaced. The following Tuesday, when the hospital removed the catheter, he was still a little groggy from the anesthesia when they sent him home. I turned his baby monitor on and put him to bed. About 1 a.m. we heard him fall. Russ and I hurried in to find him flat on his back. He said he was fine and seemed normal. The following week, I took him back to the adult daycare where they did physical therapy as part of their program. When he came home, he complained about severe pain in his right shoulder. He wanted me to put a bolus of milk toast on it, an old-fashioned remedy for sore muscles. I took him to the ER instead. They said his arm was broken and had been for about a week. It must have happened when he fell the week before, but he never complained until physical therapy worked with it. He was unable to use his walker or wheelchair, so they admitted him to the nursing home across the street from the hospital and told me to go home and get some rest. Having been up several nights in a row, I was exhausted and looked forward to the break. About 3 a.m., the phone rang. The nurse didn't have to tell me what was going on. I could hear Dad in the background yelling at the top of his lungs, "Jolene, come get me! Jolene!" I barely brushed my hair before driving there as fast as I could. Dad was in the middle of the nurses' station, kicking and hitting anyone who dared come near him. As soon as he saw me, he began yelling, "Get me out of here!" I was able to calm him down and wheel him back to his room. I tried to explain he was there because he had a broken arm. He had taken the sling off and kept insisting in an angry voice, "I don't have a broken arm." I gently squeezed his shoulder, and he let out a yelp. I asked him, "Is this the arm that's not broken?" He quieted down and reluctantly got back into bed. He took the medication they offered, and I stayed with him till he fell asleep. Before Dad fell and ended up in the nursing home, Russ and I had planned a short getaway for that weekend. When we returned, I was shocked to see he had an IV and a sign over his bed that read, "Nothing by mouth." The nurses told me he was frantic on Saturday night, yelling and screaming for me again. He spit out his pills and tried to climb out of bed. The next afternoon he had a minor stroke. They ran some blood work, took x-rays, and got a urine sample. He had pneumonia, septicemia, a serious blood infection, and a bladder infection, along with his broken arm. When I asked why they hadn't contacted me on Saturday, they said they thought they had him under control. He hadn't eaten or had any fluids since Friday, as he kept choking on his food. When I arrived, they ordered a partial barium swallow. He was thrilled to hear the test consisted of apple juice and tapioca pudding. Tapioca pudding was his favorite. I watched as I gave him less than a tablespoon of apple juice, and he aspirated it. The juice went into his lungs. The test was stopped immediately, and they began to remove the equipment. Dad looked shocked and whimpered, "Well, what about the pudding? You told me I could have pudding." It was about the saddest thing I'd ever heard him say. I was fighting back the tears when he turned to me and moaned, "They promised I could have pudding, Jolene. Why didn't they give me the pudding?" The nurse had begun to wheel him out when I leaned over and gave him a hug. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I tried to control my emotions, but I couldn't hold back any longer." A slow, consistent stream of tears ran down my cheeks the entire way back to his room. August 26th. The doctor told us since Dad was aspirating everything he swallowed, he had 3 choices. He could have a tube put down his nose or into his stomach to be fed, or he could stop eating altogether. Dad didn't hesitate. He said, "If I can't taste my food, I have no reason to live." There was no discussion, no attempt at reasoning with him, and no compassion. The doctor abruptly removed his IV, ordered no food or water, and walked out. I was stunned. They could have at least left the IV in. I wasn't about to follow the doctor's order. So when Dad was thirsty, I gave him sips of water. I couldn't see what difference it would make at this point. The 2 things he enjoyed, eating and traveling, were both gone. There was nothing left to do but celebrate. Sunday, August 28th, Dad invited everyone to his going-away party. He wanted all the children, grandchildren, and friends to come to the nursing home to say their goodbyes. He was upbeat and cheerful, joking and talking. He made everyone feel good about his decision. Dad knew he was going home to be with the Lord, Mom, and his folks. As my nephew was leaving, Dad told him, "Andy, I'll see you again in 50 or 60 years. It was touching, and Andy felt blessed. Then Dad turned to his longtime friend and joked, and I'll see you in a month or two." He always had a joke up his sleeve. Dad seemed perfectly content with his decision and never mentioned regretting it. He had assurance of his salvation and looked forward to joining all those who had gone before him. Although I had begun nursing school 2 weeks earlier, I sat with Dad whenever I could. He said many things in those last few days, some while he was lucid, some when he was not. He asked one of the nurses, "I don't know your name, but would you marry me?" She politely declined. He turned to me and said, "I'm talking foolishness. Don't listen to this crazy fool." I smoothed his hair and smiled. "Dad, in your condition, you're allowed to talk any way you want." I kissed his forehead and told him I loved him. One afternoon, I thought he was sound asleep. His eyes were closed when he raised his head slightly and quickly announced, "I love my daughter, and my daughter loves me," then laid his head back down. 2 days before he died, there was a mumbled message on my answering machine. "Jolene, keep me out of here. I'm surrounded by people speaking Spanish, and I can't understand them." I called the nurses' station and was told all the nurses caring for him spoke English. However, he was trying to communicate in sign language and kept repeating, "Bueno, bueno." He gradually faded each day until on September 2nd, 2005, he slipped into a coma and died peacefully. He was 90. I praise the Lord there was no struggle or apparent suffering as I had seen with Mom. I wish we had bonded sooner. He had a tender heart, was sentimental, loved his family, and wished he could take back the pain he had caused anyone. Don't we all, Dad? Don't we all? As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. Psalms 103:12.